And that's what is so shocking. We do not lack information. We lack application.
That's true.
We are overloaded with information. People probably could answer your questions as well as I can with, my education experience. They know. But wow, what am I going to do now that I know? And I think that we're responsible for what we know.
Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I really hope this episode helps you learn and master the skills you need to grow your leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as I post a new session so you don't miss a single episode. I'd also greatly appreciate any reviews, likes, and shares that you can give me. It just helps me extend my reach to more people. So leaders, I know just how frustrating it can feel when you're in the weeds of work or ministry and life is chaotic, you're struggling to feel effective, and you're just not enjoying leadership as much as you could be. And so to help you, after many years of leadership and executive coaching, I've developed a framework called the Christian Leader Blueprint that'll guide you to find clarity in your life and leadership. It'll help you gain a better rhythm of life. It'll help you see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and you'll produce more productive relationships. It's a step-by-step guide to leadership transformation. And I have that in two formats now. I have a free short guide that you can find on ryanfranklin.org, and I have a book, The Christian Leader Blueprint. And you can find that in any format, including an audiobook, wherever you buy your books. I have a few more things on my website that you may be interested in, so just head on over to ryanfranklin.org and check it all out. And now, let's get to our session. Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Franklin, and on the show today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Cindy Miller. Dr. Miller is a seasoned minister, counselor, professor, and speaker who brings a wealth of knowledge to the topics of leadership and pastoral care and personal development. And I can't wait to dive into today's conversation with her. But before we do, I want to tell you a little bit more about her. Cindy lives in New Jersey with her husband, Stanton Miller, who is not only her best friend, but also her ministry partner. And together they founded Calvary Tabernacle in Wrightstown, New Jersey. She holds a PhD in pastoral care and counseling, serves as a professor at Urshan Graduate School of Theology. And in addition to that, she's authored 5 books. She also is the host of Let's Talk podcast, where she tackles a wide range of issues from ministry life to personal development for ladies. Cindy travels the globe. She speaks at conferences all over the place. She provides counseling, consultations for UPCI churches and clergy. So, Dr. Miller, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. Honored to have time with you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. It's been a little while since we've initially talked about this back in the spring, but I'm excited.
You're busy. I mean, you're just so busy. I couldn't get us on schedule with you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna blame you for this one.
Well, I'll take that. That's okay. I'll take that. I won't tell anybody how busy you are.
Oh, no, because then our whole thing today will be void. And they're like, what are they doing about their Sabbath?
That's right. Well, we are going to talk about that a little bit before we jump into that main topic. Would you mind just sharing some key moments of your journey that got you to where you are today with your education and your career path?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Houston, Texas. Now, I'm not going to take you all the way back to my childhood, but I grew up in Houston.
I didn't realize you were a Texas girl.
I am a Texan, absolutely. And it's so funny. Once you're from Texas, you're always from Texas. So when people, even just a couple of years ago, I realized when they said, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "I'm from Texas, but I live in New Jersey." And I'm like, I got to get this turned around here. I've actually lived in New Jersey longer than I lived in Texas. But I grew up there and had such a great life, my wonderful pastor, great parents, but not perfect. My parents, wonderful, loving, good parents, not perfect. So, I grow up, I marry, moved to New Jersey, and I'm kind of just living this life that, with what I know, that this
Mm-hmm.
is what women do. I never thought about pursuing a PhD or being a professor. That just wasn't on my radar. But, sometimes, Ryan, the Lord just baby steps us through life. He gives us a desire, and the desire is on level with what we know. Because sometimes if the dream is too big or it's unknown to us, we would reject it because we just can't figure it out. Our brain can't
It would
absorb it.
overwhelm us. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so he just kind of baby stepped me. I was a young mom. I wanted to understand more about parenting. So I was looking to take some classes. And so honestly, my beginning was really just about personal development. Like, oh, I think I should go and take some classes. And then something came alive in me and like, oh, I think I need to take a lot more. And so then you find yourself, coming to the end of one degree and thinking, what's next? Well, by the time I was through with, I had a few degrees, a couple of, undergrad stuff. And we had started this church and we were church planters, and we'd started church in Wrightstown, and it felt like so many people were coming, and it just felt overwhelmed by the problems. I thought, surely, when my pastor had his church, he didn't have all this craziness going on. It must just be these New Jersey people. And so I thought about taking some counseling classes to be more equipped for ministry. But here's the truth of the matter. The Lord sent me into my counseling program to do a work in me. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I've really come to discover about my journey is several months, it's probably in the spring before I even applied to my program. I woke up one morning and I felt like the Lord woke me up. And he said, you're going on a journey of growth, discovery, and revelation. And I had no idea what that meant, but I felt so much excitement, like he had just given me an invitation to the greatest adventure of my life. And not long after that, the doors began to open up. There was some conversation. I was introduced to a program for counseling that I was accepted into. And it just kind of, after that moment with the Lord that morning, it was just like, it moved so quick. I could barely keep up with the Lord. And I entered the counseling program with the idea I was going to help a few people. And the Lord just did such a work, a healing work, a maturing work, a greater level of understanding of how he's at work in my life. It was just absolutely life changing. And after that, so I finished my master's program and I was thinking, I guess I'm done. I wasn't thinking. And then I received a scholarship to go to another school for a year of postgraduate studies. And I don't know how much of this you really want, but
No,
I was ladies
very interested
president.
in this.
Okay. I was ladies president for New Jersey, Delaware district at the time. And I was coming, it was our ladies conference in May. I was finishing up my year of postgraduate studies in systems theory, Bowenian family systems, and thinking, what am I going to do with all this education? What does this even mean? I mean, I feel like I'm pouring it into our young church, but Lord, what do you want me to do? And I remember sitting on the platform at ladies conference, and the Lord again spoke to me and said, this will be your last conference as ladies president. And I felt in that moment, and I had loved it. I'd served in ladies ministry for 12 years. I loved every ounce of it and still do. I'm still heavily involved with ladies ministry. But at that moment, I knew it was like, you've got to let this go. You've got to release this. So in a moment, God gave me this understanding. Now, here's the thing, Ryan. I don't know if you're like me, but I didn't trust myself because I loved what I was doing so much that I thought, if I don't get up and say something at this conference, because, the district vote's right around the corner, then I could walk away from this moment with the Lord and hold on to what I know and love. So at the end of the conference, I got up and I made this just real brief, but it was like, thank you all. I've loved being your ladies president. This is going to be my last conference as president. I won't be, because I did not trust myself. I was going to hold on to it. And I felt like the Lord honored that. Like, I was like, Lord, if you're telling me this, I don't know what's ahead, but I'm not going to hold on to things and lose out on other opportunities. And it was like within weeks that I was contacted by UGST to see if I'd be interested in pursuing a life with them as a professor, working with them. And so that began to unfold. I went into my PhD program, and here we are 22 years later. I'm professor of practical theology and program director for our Master of Arts in Christian Ministry, for our Master of Divinity, and also, which we're very excited, we just rolled out our new Doctor of Ministry program. So, yeah, I think the Lord had something in store for me. Absolutely.
Well, I admire you for being willing to step away from such a prominent position and pursue what you felt that the Lord wanted you to move towards. That's not easy. It's
No,
not an easy thing.
It's not. It really isn't. We want to hold on. But thank you for your kind words. But the Lord, I think He would have let me stay and do that. Like, He gives us choices. And if I had said, "Oh no, Lord, I love this so much," He would have allowed that. But sometimes, holding on, you miss out on some really great opportunities.
That's so true. And now with the influence that you have at UGST, you're making a worldwide impact, not just a district, but you're making an impact around the world. People, it's not just a national school; it's people travel. I've heard of
from
people
all
from
over the
Australia
world.
and different places.
We're so blessed. We love our
attended.
international students. Yes,
for sure. Well, you wear a ton of hats. You're a professor, counselor, as I mentioned, and you mentioned minister, pastor. Probably more that we don't even know about. Maybe that you don't even know about.
Well, they kind of just hit. It's like, oh yeah, I am responsible for that. I better take care of it. Yeah.
And I'm making light of that, but you do wear a lot of hats. And I have a two-part question for you. First, what does balance mean to you? And then secondly, what strategies have helped you maintain a healthy work-life balance in the midst of being such a highly productive person?
Well, balance. So I have this working theory about balance in my life. I think most of my life is out of balance. I mean, this is, just bear with me, but it's not out of control. So in my book, Let's Talk, one of the chapters in there, it's out of balance, but not out of control. But I clearly, even to this day, the book is a little bit older, I remember writing that chapter. I was sitting in my living room in front of the fire, and I am at great peace, right? I am love, and I'm writing this chapter of this book. My house, we'd had a flood in the basement. My mom was really sick, struggling with some health issues. I had a friend that was going through a difficult situation. She was hurting. I couldn't do anything about it. So all around me, life was still going on. Real life was happening.
And no balance about that.
And it's nothing you can do, floods happen, hurricanes happen. A couple of years ago, our church had water damage. We lost everything but the sanctuary, down to the studs. We had to rebuild, and at the same time, I had a health issue and a loved one passed away. And, you have no control. Life is just coming at you faster than what you can handle at the time. But so it's out of balance, but it does not have to be out of control, and it does not have to be chaotic. I think that's where we really get into understanding the rhythm of our life, what we can handle, when we need to step back, how to let go of certain things. So I think the first part of it is for me personally, the goal of living a daily balanced life, I will be disappointed in myself because I'll feel like I have this expectation I should do that. And if I am not balanced every day, I'm a failure. So I have released myself from that and then said, you know what? What do you need to focus on for today? What is right in front of you today? And, certainly I do keep a calendar. I keep kind of a planning notepad calendar, and I have my responsibilities because, I don't want to hinder other people from making progress and projects and things. And I have my own personal projects that I want to work on. But what's in the day? And sometimes we're so busy living for tomorrow and next month and next year and the next big event that I lose today. Over the weekend, I was out. I ministered at a conference. I came home Saturday night, ministered at my own home church. And then I had my family over for dinner, had dinner with my family. And then I had my granddaughters over for a sleepover, slumber party. Was that the wisest planning in the world? Probably not, but it was not out of control,
Yeah.
So I don't know if that really answers the question as you wanted
Well,
it to.
and thinking about the tactics that you would use for that balance, I've heard you talk about, and I can't recall exactly what you were saying at one point. Maybe it was at district conference this past year, but you were speaking of how you actually maybe have some chaotic days like that, but then you purposely put in days of rest and things of that nature as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about rest, but that's part of your rhythm, right?
Absolutely. So my weekend was very busy. I ministered in my home church. But when I leave church on Sunday, that is my time. Like if I don't have that 24 hours after church on Sunday into the next day, that's time I want to be with my family because they're my love, they're my energy. That being with my family feeds me. I don't work on any projects. I'm not worried about on Sunday night what's happening on Tuesday. I thought about that last week. I've already thought about that. That's on my master planner, and so I take naps. I spend time with my family. I laugh. I'm lazy.
Tell me about that master planner. I mean, I'm curious about that. That gives you the freedom to be lazy for that 24 hours after Sunday. What does that kind of look like? You're planning for the week ahead, kind of understanding what you have.
So my master planner is just laid out in front of me week by week. Every day of the week is on there. Priorities are listed, what I'm concerned about. And so I like color, so I have a color coding little thing going on, and probably just to entertain myself more than anything. But I feel like if there's something I need to remember, I don't want to keep carrying it in my brain because that's just going to keep me distracted. So everything goes on this calendar plan. And whether it's 3 weeks or a month or whatever, 6 months down the road, it's there. And I do. So I take like the 24 hours, but usually on Monday evening after I feel like, okay, I don't have a set time because if I'm, doing something, but before I go to bed on Monday evenings, I'm looking at the week. I'll pull it out and I'll go, okay, what is my week looking like? And, what do I need to be thinking about for the week? But then again, on Thursday evening or Friday, depending on if I'm flying out for the weekend or not, I review the next week. I review the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll just flip through the pages and refresh it in my mind, make some notes of how I've updated where I'm at, what's been done, what still needs to be done. So I don't ever feel like I'm just carrying it all in my brain or dropping things because I didn't know they were coming.
I find that to be extremely helpful for me. It's a little exercise I do on Sunday evening called Start of the Week Sight. Just kind of gives you some vision for your week.
Absolutely.
And sounds like you kind of do that same thing, and you just check in occasionally, and it helps you release those tasks and those things. And you have a podcast coming up, or you have to teach a class or whatever. You can kind of compartmentalize that a little better if you give vision to your week and understand what you have, and then you can rest for 24 hours if that's
without
what's on your schedule. Without guilt.
I think one thing that happens a lot, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this to me, but what about all those unexpected things? Like, I have my beautiful calendar, I have my master plan, and then, then somebody's like throwing that meeting at you, like, oh, we need a department meeting, or this came up, or I need you to take this on. If people don't have a way of sorting that out, I would feel like I was drowning. I don't know. How do you handle those last minute? You have this great plan, and all of a sudden at the last minute, everybody's like throwing things at you. What do you do? I'm here. Talk to me.
Well, you're turning this back around on me. I want to know what you do.
That's right. I'm your guest.
I can tell you host a podcast as well.
Too much fun.
I do have, as a busy assistant pastor, I do have quite a bit of things that are given to me, at various times and emergencies and whatnot. One thing I'm very thankful I'm afforded at POA, a personal assistant, and so she can filter a lot of that stuff for me. Those things that are thrown at me, and sort of we have built-in times where we'll meet and talk about things. From the usually daily, we'll have a 30-minute here, hour here, where we talk through those things, and we can deal with those compartmentally versus them all just coming sporadically at me through the day. But I also have that as well for people that have my cell phone and things of that nature. And I have found that personally, I've just got to build in a little bit of margin in my day to deal with those things. And so I may have to push them off for a couple of hours, but I'll deal with it at some point in the day and talk through it. But it's, sometimes, and reality of it is sometimes I just have to tell people I'm sorry, I can't get to it now, but after. And I use, same thing with my marriage or, whatever. If I'm not in a appropriate place to deal with something in that moment, I would love to be able to deal with that, but I just can't right now. Can we talk about this, at such and such time, or after dinner, or after,
Well, and I think one of the things that helps me is that the key word is margin. When I look at a day and I'm having to ride all around all the edges to get it in, I know that's not realistic, and I'm going to let myself down. I'm going to let others down. So not overscheduling ourselves is really important. Knowing that the unexpected and the unplanned is going to invade our life. If we want to have some kind of rhythm and balance to life, it is to say, this is going to happen. So breathing room is, a necessity, but also just being able to say no. I would love to, just having the ability to understand I'm not in a place where I can do anything about this, and just be guilt free that I'm saying no.
You seem to be pretty good at that. Is there any particular? I know that comes with good character growth, and you've likely experienced a lot of counseling yourself as counseling people, but you've also been counseled and have experienced a lot of character growth as you've gone through school and just being with the Lord and over the years. Is there any other tactics that you use to say no without guilt?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, in the beginning, I said yes for probably some of the wrong reasons. Now, this is where on the surface, I really believed I was doing the right thing, and I wanted to do everything to please the Lord. So my yeses were about, well, this is for the Lord. So I felt like, I needed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And some teaching from, others, like, oh, if the Lord opens the door, you got to walk through it. And that is true. Absolutely. And I've tried to always obey that. But Ryan, at some point, your years of experience, your education, that's going to open doors. And the Lord is saying, if you want to walk through it, fine. Or he may say, no, don't walk through it. But our ego wants to walk through it, and separating that's really important. What I learned more about saying no through the scripture. So as a church planter, being in ministry in my district, a wife and a mom, and working on my education, it was a lot. It was just a lot going on. And so I remember one day I was just reading the Bible just for reading. I wasn't reading it to like, God didn't direct me to a certain passage, but ultimately he did, of course. But I was reading on the master with the servants who he gave the talents to. And he left for the trip and came back, and they came to give an account for the work what they had done, investing those talents. He was pleased, well done, enter in. But that last servant made excuses. I hid it in the ground. I was afraid, lots of excuses of why he didn't do anything with his talent. And the master, of course, was very unhappy with him, and we know the story. And at that moment, the Lord spoke to me. So, of course, you have to remember, I was in a very overwhelmed state, saying yes to way too many things, trying to be God Jr. to the whole world, being his right-hand woman. And he spoke to me and he said, when you take what I've given you, when you take your education, your experiences, your growth, everything, and you pour it into people who do nothing with it, you are like this servant who buried the talent in the ground, and I'm not pleased with you. And wow, in that moment, I realized I am accountable to God for my time, for where I invest, what he's put into me. Everything I have has come from him. And if I'm just pouring it out, because I've been asked to, and it's not advancing, there's no return on that investment, he's not pleased with the way I'm stewarding my time and resources. So that was my first awareness that I need to really check in with him about what I'm doing. And then also my ego got under control, and I realized because I was asked if I couldn't, they went right on and found other people to do it. So it wasn't like the world was going to fall apart if I said no. So I think the ability to say no is understanding, God, where do you want me to invest? I want to invest where I get a return. And also realizing that because the door opened, it doesn't mean I need to walk through it. There may be someone else who could do that job and maybe even do it better than me.
Would you say that having a personal vision for your future also helped with that? Like you knew what to say no to because you knew where you were headed towards?
I think I think a personal vision, sometimes you have a vision that's very clear and you can see down the road, but sometimes you can only see the next step. But I think staying true to doing the next thing is going to, you wake up and look back and say, look what the Lord has done. So yes, a personal vision, but God's vision is always going to be bigger than ours. And so I have enough light on the path to do the next thing sometimes, or 5 things. But just staying true to that next thing and not getting distracted.
When you said that you were no longer going to be the ladies' president anymore, did you know the next step
I
at that
don't.
point?
I did. I had no idea. I just knew in that moment that he had clearly said that to me and that I needed to let this go. Well, at that point, I've served him long enough to know he wasn't asking me to let go of something because he didn't like me, and
Yeah.
he was, shutting me down forever. I knew that if he was asking me to let go of something by faith,
Yeah.
that he had something for me. But apparently, in God's great mind, I wasn't going to be able to do both well, and so I had to let go of one to take on the other.
And I hear a lot of trust in your voice, which only comes with relationship with the Lord. You trusted the Lord in that moment and stepped out on a limb, really,
Mm-hmm.
and pursued what He. So your trust in the Lord even helped you to be able to say no to one thing and yes to another thing.
Oh, and that's the truth. You know what? He's so faithful. But we have to learn. It's like any relationship. You have those highs and lows and rocky places. But I've learned to trust him even when I don't understand or have a clue or like it.
Yeah.
Years have made me aware he's really only for my good. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
always feel good, but it is about kingdom purpose, and he loves me, and so
Absolutely.
sometimes change feels like great loss, and being asked to give something up feels scary. And I know people are listening, and they're maybe could take this the wrong way. Uh, we don't just walk away from everything in a moment or emotionally walk away. Like, oh, I have an emotional moment at the altar. I think I'm just going to give everything up, go sit on a mountain, and wait on the Lord to open the next thing. I think there's wisdom that comes with that as well. But yeah, just knowing his voice. Is this
Yeah.
the Lord, or am I in a bad place and things didn't go the way I wanted them to? So any little hint that he's going to let me off the hook, I'm going to take it. No, this was an experience where everything was great, and the best attendance, the best
Yeah.
conference, the highest high, best offering, everything was. But how kind of him to let me walk away at the height of it, like,
Right.
hey,
Right.
this is great. So I don't know that it's a real balancing act making those decisions.
So when people are struggling in these areas of boundaries in their life, being able to say no, guilt when they do say no, those types of things,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things can build in an individual's life and can lead them down a road where they find themselves in a tough place emotionally. And work sometimes is overtaking their rest and everything else in their life, and
Mm-hmm.
and there's no sense of um, rhythm to, we all have work that's going to overtake our rest at
Yeah,
times, but
right.
when we have that rhythm, we can swing back to what grounds us. Well, this individual that's in a tough emotional place, their rest and everything else in life is out of whack, and they've moved past just a rough week, like we
Mm-hmm.
all have, and they're beginning to see some signs of burnout. And I wanted to ask you, what do you typically see as signs of burnout, and what advice would you give this person?
Well, I think people start feeling like I want to come late and leave early. They're
Mm-hmm.
looking for exits. And unfortunately, if they don't tend to what's causing it, leaders have created exit strategies that will forever keep them from returning to the thing that they feel like is the problem, through moral failure or just really horrific decisions that they've made. But they start looking for exit strategies. They report just not able to get out of bed, just depressed, no vision,
Mm-hmm.
no, almost robot kind of moving through the day, just uh, producing the most limited amount, no joy, absolutely no joy. So you'll start hearing a lot of that kind of language. Um,
Emotional energy is gone.
Completely gone. Yeah, they have no energy. There's nothing feeding them. Everything is draining them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I always refer anyone that's talking to me and my students read the book, Leading on Empty. Are you
Yeah.
familiar? Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
familiar. It's such a
Yeah.
great resource to have. But one of the things that I took from that book, borrowed from him, is the fills and drains. And I kind of have some things I do on a regular basis. Like, I believe in assessment. Like, I'm
Mhm.
assessing on a regular basis. Like, what is this week like? Why is it going great? Why is it not going great? I believe in having good reflection time. Uh, that theological reflection, that pause, action pause to reflect, action or corrective action. I believe in that highly,
Yeah.
as kind of almost, I probably do it daily. It's not just like on the calendar. I think it's so ingrained in me. It's how I think and feel. But I do believe that the first thing that people need to do when they're looking at, like, I've lost my joy, is to really look at, what's draining you. Well,
Mhm.
I, cleaning my house isn't exactly a fill. It's a necessity. So it's not going to go away. Paying bills, there are some things, or that one person that's being difficult. There are some things I have no control over. But the things I do have control over, I should be mindful, who I let speak into my life, where I invest my time. But when you look at it, most people who are headed to burnout is because everything's draining them and they're not doing anything to refill that tank, so to speak. And
Mhm.
so, if like I said, my busy weekend, what did I do to end it? My children and their children came for dinner. My grandgirls stayed over. You've got to
So
offset the
it's
drains with the good things that bring you joy in life.
yeah. So typically people would think, well, I'm an introvert and I'm doing extroverted activities and I got to go be away from people. You said that you went to your family, which is more people. You're going to, you know,
Yeah, but they're my
so,
favorite people.
well, and that's the point I want to bring out is a lot of people think they need to withdraw and
Mm,
detach from people to, to get energy again. And the
mm,
reality of it is they just need safe people that are going to fill them up,
yeah,
right?
I think so. I think the temptation when you're depressed or you're burning out is isolation,
Yes.
because if I'm isolated, if I'm in my office with the door closed, no one's talking to me, they can't ask anything of me. So it's a self-protective strategy. So let
Yeah.
me protect myself from further demands by being alone. Because being an introvert doesn't mean that you need to isolate. It just means
Hmm.
you don't need a party. You just
Yeah.
need that one or two or few, that's going to help you to renew. And when my family's all around me, I mean, my kids may be at the dinner table just talking about life, and my grandkids might be playing a game, and I'll be in the recliner with a blanket just listening, kind of
And
dozing a
it's
little bit,
filling you up.
and it's just like, they're all the people I love the most are around me. This fills my tank.
Yeah.
Um, but
But
again,
knowing that about you, knowing what
hmm
resets you is super
hmm
important, and that's one thing that resets you. Anything else that sort of that maybe is not even relative to you, but you've seen in others that would reset them.
yeah, I think that it's really important to know yourself. And
Hmm.
sometimes people can't figure that out too well, So one of the reasons I think people overload their calendar is they just really do not know who they are. And one way, if you don't know, one way to really figure it out is not who am I, but who am I not?
Yeah,
I am not this,
that's really good. Yeah,
So we're much quicker to recognize what we're not. Well, I'm not the worship leader at my church for a very good reason. I am not the keyboard player for a very good reason. I am not. So I can make this list of things I am not. And, I can remember years ago being invited to this other country, and they said, like, we're going to have this evangelistic crusade. Thank the Lord. I said, I am not evangelist. Like, why they thought that was going to be a good idea, I have no idea. So I am not these things. But if you want to talk about heart and life, I'm your person. So
yeah,
sometimes we get overloaded because, hey, when you come preach this evangelistic crusade through the country. 45 million will be there. Our ego goes, yes. No, you have to know, I am not an evangelist. I am not this. I am not this. But then on the flip side is by knowing those things, then you can start reflecting, but I am this and I am this.
Yeah.
And that's where I need to invest my time and attention.
So before we continue on with the podcast, this episode is brought to you by Christian Leader Community Coaching. Are you a Christian leader who is overwhelmed by the complexity of trying to figure out how to grow your team? I want to introduce to you our Christian Leader Community Coaching program. We have an easy-to-use online platform that has a full archive of courses, supportive community, live group coaching, and elements that are customizable specifically for your team. And I've personally seen the quick and enormous impact that it can have on a team of leaders who are focused together on learning and mastering the skills needed to grow their leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. And we want to be a part of that with you. We want to help you create and implement a plan. The community is very much affordable, but I would say that you can't afford not to have focused growth within your team. Your results heavily depend on it. So don't wait any longer. Let's do this together. Go to ryanfranklin.org and join Christian Leader Community Coaching today. I look forward to seeing you and your team inside the community. And now, back to our podcast. But knowing what you're not can help you reduce the energy drain as well.
Oh, absolutely. You quit saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
You know, and you begin to work in balance.
And here's the issue with that. We may have a competency in a particular area, and we may do it well, but yet it drains the life of us. And that's still the thing that we need to get off of our plate as much as possible.
Because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it, right?
Exactly. I coach people, from time to time that are really good at a lot of things. But even though they're good at a lot of things, doesn't mean they need to do all of those things. And there's things that fill me up, and there's things that I do pretty well that drain me. As much as I can get those off of my plate, I don't want to preach all the time. That's a drainer for me. It sucks the life out of me whenever I preach. I feel like I do a decent job at it, but once a month, twice a month is max for me. I don't want to do it any more than that, which, allows me to focus on things that really fill me up, like behind the scenes work that, keeping the wheels turning and things of that nature that I really enjoy doing.
And that made me think of this too. There's also the opportunity. Saying no doesn't mean shutting a door. I mean, sometimes saying no means you're opening a door for someone else that is really good and gifted and called. And I think we should be door openers for others, right? If someone gives us an opportunity and maybe it's not our thing particularly, we could, but why? Then being mindful, but I do know this guy who's a great coach and leader. So it's really a gift. I love to think that my no is not just I'm shutting people off or out, but my no is that I want to offer you someone that could do a job better than I could. So
exactly.
It's just really an awesome part of being the kingdom of God is connecting people together. We're not the whole body of Christ. Isn't that a relief?
We're an arm, or we're a leg, or we're a finger, or whatever.
Yeah. And just enjoy our part. But let's connect the whole body, help each other out.
So let's just say a person has done a really not so good of a job in adhering to these things. They're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. It's emotionally draining them. They've done this for way too long. They've actually moved past the point of burnout, and now they're kind of in a crisis. If you have a pastor who calls you who is in crisis, what do what do you tell this person to help them out of that crisis?
Well, this is what pastors don't want to hear, but it's the reality. You cannot heal when you're staying in everything that's causing you to be burnout, and you're still going to try to do that and create healing. If you've gone to that point, you're going to have to step away. Now, whether it's for 3 days or 3 months, that has to be determined based on the circumstances. But to even take a deep breath, look around, think of your family, create a plan, it takes a little bit of time. You need to be outside or take a walk on the beach or go to dinner with your spouse. You need to hear from other people that can speak wisdom into your life and situation. So when I get ministers who are in crisis, our first plan is to create space. So who do you know that you could call? Who do you trust that you could have them take care of your church for X number of days? So, you got to create breathing room. If you've gotten to this point, you're not going to bounce back staying in the difficult situation you're in.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that people can understand is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Maybe they know, like, hey, if I don't make some changes, this isn't going to be good. But instead of, I'm going to resign the church and go work at the public library because that seems quiet and peaceful, well, take some baby steps. Don't try to go from 1 to 10 overnight. Just go from 1 to 1.5. What is a baby step you could do? What is one small thing you could do today to take some pressure off, create some breathing room? What is something you can say no to that isn't going to turn the world upside down because you did this? You're not out to create more chaos. So, what can you do to help yourself with little baby steps?
Yeah. How important is it for that individual in crisis to find somebody that can walk this with them, not just to come take over their church for a few days, but to actually be there with them, a counselor, their pastor, or somebody that they trust, maybe a organizational official or whatever. And if they don't have anybody in their life, they don't know of anybody that they could call. Is there resources among the UPCI that I know I'm putting you on the spot here. I didn't ask you this originally, but I'm just thinking of the person that just feels hopeless and doesn't have that.
Well, for the person that feels hopeless, I think they've got to absolutely reach out to someone in a better place with a little, like maybe their presbyter, their pastor, the district superintendent, to find out locally what resources, what do they have there, as well as,
Good
what
advice.
could happen within the UPCI. But before we get to that, so 10 years ago, I did a study on pastors, a research study. And and I'm not going to go into the details of the study, but some of the findings were amazing. One of the things that built resiliency, like the key thing, there were several things, but one of the key things was that resilient pastors is they have a network of support. Their ability to bounce back in tough times is directly linked to this network of support. Not one person, not a best friend, or even just leaning on seeing a counselor occasionally, but they created a network. So this, if one's not available, other sources are. So, yes, we look at the spouse. If you and your spouse are not in a good place, then you need to work on your marriage, because you can't keep running full steam ahead while everything's falling apart at home.
Right.
If you need to parent well, you need to have relationships with your children. That's part of your network of support. They need to know they matter, that they're important. I have a best friend. She makes me laugh like nobody else. She's also in ministry, and understands the ministry life. And so She can normalize some of the things for me. She challenges me. She makes me want to be a better person. But I have friends. I have, my colleagues at work. I mean, they're so brilliant. They're amazing, and just chatting with them is inspiring. But I know if I was not in a good place, I could say to any one of them, like, hey, help me think this through. So however you do it or the listener does it, you have to think network of support. I need a pastor. I need a mentor. I need role models. Not everyone is going to have a mentor that they can talk to on a weekly basis, but we do have role models that we could look at and say, I want to learn from that person. I want to take this. I want to include this in my life. But surprisingly, here I am, a counselor doing this study. And the one thing that is most likely not to happen is for leaders is they do not go to counseling. They are so busy providing the counseling that they don't seek it for themselves.
Yeah.
And, as a counselor, I'm just stunned by that. Like, who wouldn't want to go and have this undivided attention while you pour out your heart? Like, where else in the world did you get this, right?
Who wouldn't want to be vulnerable and just
who
share?
Wouldn't? Who wouldn't in a safe place, But I think once people have a good experience with counseling and they see the benefit, they are more likely. But let's just be honest, we've got all these reasons and I get them. Like I had someone in my life for years and years and he recently retired. And I just felt like, oh my goodness, I got to find, I wanted someone for supervision as well as to talk through my own stuff. And you look at it and you think, okay, well, I want someone who understands who I am as an apostolic. That's very important. When I talk about hearing from God, I don't want them to, try to put me on medication that I'm hearing voices, I want them to understand who I am as an apostolic. But then, oh my goodness, I don't want to run into them at General Conference after having just shared my deepest, darkest secrets. Would I even be able to look at them? So it is hard. Who do I trust? Who do I pick? And remembering that when you go to see a counselor, they may be doing an intake with you, but you're interviewing them. Like if there's not a good connection, that doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means like, well, I need to interview a couple of counselors to see who my best fit is going to be. But I think having a godly counselor, my counselor was not apostolic, but my counselor was spirit-filled, very biblically based, godly person. And so I think you got to find that for yourself. And that, unfortunately, that takes work. It takes time and intention to do. If you're not going to do that, you cannot avoid having a network of support. You've got to have that if you're going to bounce back in ministry.
Yeah, there's no doubt that community with others, that relational support, that's what's going to fill you. That's what's going to, that's the individuals that are going to help you out of a bind when you're in a bind. So kind of moving full circle with this, I mean, the goal would be, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, the goal would be to, sort of have some proactive measures where we don't get there, where we don't get to the crisis and we don't get to even the feelings of burnout.
Right.
And so, I would call that emotional resilience. We want some emotional resilience that's, to handle the crazy demands of ministry and leadership, over the long term. What advice could you give us to help leaders develop that emotional resilience?
Well, things don't happen in a vacuum. And so we really need to be aware of what is not going right in our lives and in multiple areas. So I believe in wholeness. So there's, and I've talked about this a lot. Probably anybody who knows me knows I'm going to talk about 5 domains of wellness, and that is the physical, the psychological, emotional domain, the social, relational domain, the spiritual, and then the professional, ministerial domains. Those are the 5 domains. Because if you don't have them, if you're not working in all of those, you can't just be super strong in the ministry domain, like my professional life is thriving, but all the other domains are, a wreck. We are whole. We are one person. How I do relationship with my family is how I do relationship with the Lord. How I do relationship with others is evidence, So we tend to, if we're doing really well without other people, usually we're moving into, I'm doing really well without other people, and that I'm doing really well without the Lord, because He calls us to loving people. He calls us to being engaged as the body of Christ. So if I'm not engaging with that, with other people, I'm probably leaving Him out a lot too. So I do believe in the check-ins. So I have an assessment sheet. I'd be happy to share it with you if you want to put it in the notes section and listeners can use it. It's one thing I use all the time, and I'll just go through it. And Ryan, I hate that assessment sheet so much sometimes, because it really, like, I'm going through it, and some areas I'm like, oh, 3, aren't I wonderful? And then it's like some sections I'm like 1, 1, 1. And if it had a negative, on that, I'd probably be in the negative zone. But that is such a great reminder. Like, yes, hey, this week you're going to focus on this. You're going to bring that number up a little bit,
Yeah.
Because in the physical, so much happens. If you're not moving, you don't have the good chemicals bathing your brain. So even taking a walk can be so good for your mind, your mental, your emotional balance. Moving. It also gives you some red flags there. Like if you see certain things that, are checked in the low zone, then you're like, oh, wow, if I'm not feeling well, I'm not doing well physically, this is soon going to impact a lot of, what we experience emotionally is because physically we're not doing well. You can't eat candy bars all day and feel emotionally on top of the world, because one impacts the other. We have to have help. I have to be in good standing in my relationships with God and others. And then I have to be growing in one of the things about burnout, going back to burnout, is a lot of times people burn out because they feel like they're asked to do jobs they're not equipped to do or experienced to do. And so one of the things in that domain is, are you taking on jobs that you're not equipped to do? So what are you going to do? What's your plan? Are you going to go to school and get some experience? Are you going to go to a seminar, take a workshop, listen to a podcast? What are you going to do to better support yourself or delegate it? Sure. Like, look at Moses, he operated out of his strength. He delegated for his weakness. I'm not a great speaker. See, again, he knew who he was not. I am not a great speaker. Delegated that to Aaron or God did, delegated for his weakness. Why aren't we doing more of that?
Yeah,
So I think I do use the assessment to really help me track. Is something going a little sideways there? I do feel
this is an emotional health assessment, like a few questions that you ask yourself.
It's a mental wellness. It's just
mental wellness. Okay.
It's an assessment for looking at the 5 domains that if you're tracking pretty well in each of those domains, not perfect. We're not perfect, but it gives you an opportunity to see, because if those 5 domains are tended to, you're going to experience mental wellness unless, that's just something that's way outside of the box happened, some kind of trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And people have to, assessments are tremendous. I love assessments. I've got my own Christian Leader self-assessment on my website. We can learn a lot about ourselves by doing assessments, but then people have to get in there and do something about it. They've got to get in circles where they're learning and actually participating in improving those parts that they need to improve.
And that's what is so shocking. We do not lack information. We lack application. We are overloaded with information. People probably could answer your questions as well as I can with, my education experience. They know. But wow, what am I going to do now that I know? And I think that we're responsible for what we know. We have that knowledge. So I think God expects us to do something with it. He's not just going to keep blessing effort that he didn't ask us to get involved with anyway. He loves us,
Yeah.
but at some point he's like, wow, you're going to have to make some changes.
Well, anything else you want to say about work-life balance or emotional health or anything that we've talked about so far? I've got one more question I want to ask you, but before we leave that topic.
Well, I think, my main concern is application. I think people hear this,
Mm-hmm.
Probably
So true.
they know so much about it. There's never going to be a convenient time. There's never going to be the right day. There's never going to be like, oh, on Monday, I'm going to do this. That's like starting a diet every Monday, right? On Monday, the weekend, I'm going to feast. If the Lord is prompting you right now and you have the warning flags are flying and it's like, be aware things are not going well, then I think today's the day you've got to say, I need to stop and I need to reevaluate, because hearing one more podcast and doing nothing with it is not going to save you. It's not going to salvage where you're at. And God didn't call you to salvage situations. He called you to a fullness in ministry and life and thriving. And so if it's not going well, then really that getting unstuck is very important.
That's good stuff. Very good. So just shifting with one last question, I'm just curious, and we'll end on this question, but outside of your prayer and devotion, what's one ritual or routine that helps you, Dr. Cindy Miller, do what you do?
Well, I have one that I really love, and I do it a lot. I've actually taught my grandchildren to do it. They just don't know they're doing it. They just think we're having a conversation. But one thing that I do that I found was very important, because we do wear a lot of hats and have a lot of different things going, is a practice that I use called closing the loop. I found years and years ago that, and it is part of theological reflection just by a different name, but I found that I was in the moment, but I was, in my church ministering, but I was already thinking about the event happening next week and that conference I was leaving for on Thursday. And I was never truly able to enjoy the moment that God had given me. I enjoyed it, but I was already down the road. The ladies come, whatever. And so the Lord gave me this, and the peace it brings my mind. So what I do is like, I'll do this at kind of at the end of the day or at the end of a week or on Sunday with my family. And, but I always do this after a big event, a conference or a class or something that was particularly taking my time and energy and I was emptying out over. And that is, I look at it and I just bring it to the Lord. I sit in His presence. And that might be on the airplane, but it's okay. I just know, like, Lord, I just want to be alone with you in this airplane full of people. I'm alone with you right now. And I want to just think about all the good that happened this week during class. I thank you for this moment. And so I just bring all the wow moments, the God moments when I felt like He anointed me or equipped me or something went really well. And I just like can express my gratitude and my appreciation to Him for all of that.
That's
But we
so good.
also have moments that didn't go so great, and we're hard on ourselves and we ruminate over the negatives or, oh, I tripped going up to the platform or, I said that and I didn't mean to say that. And I use this word instead of that one, whatever, because we're really self-conscious a lot of times. And so then I'll just bring to Him like, Lord, this happened. I'm so disappointed. And this happened. I felt like I wasn't at my best. I didn't give it my best that day. This, and I just bring everything. You know what, Brian? I can't go back and change any of it. And ruminating on it isn't going to help one thing. It's not going to change it. But I can bring it to the Lord and I can say, Lord, and whatever I'm responsible for, I need to fix it. If I didn't spend enough time preparing, that's on me. But Lord, here's all my disappointments. Here's what didn't go right. I pray. I just give it to the Lord. I'm giving it all to you. I can't change it. I want to learn from it. I want to do better. or if it was other
That is
people's
so good.
input, other people's stuff, Lord, I forgive that person, for what they said. I release that person from that certain behavior. And when we travel, it happens. People have different ways of interacting.
Yeah.
And so I can pray and release that to the Lord. But then I have a plan. So then it's like, okay, what will I do different next time? Lord, is there anything I need to think about that I'll do different next time? And again, because I write things down, I don't want it in my brain, then I can say, okay, well, I need to do these three things different. I'll jot them down. And when I get back to my master planner, I'll make notes if I'm teaching that class again or a conference around that topic again or whatever. And then I just kind of seal it with like, thank you, Lord, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much. And it doesn't take a long time. It's not, you don't need pen and paper even. I just kind of like, I just want to be
That's
in
a
that
powerful
moment.
routine.
Yeah. And
That
then
is a powerful
I
routine.
feel like my mind is released to go to the next thing.
Yeah. So you're celebrating, you're celebrating the wins. You're sort of grieving the losses.
Mm-hmm.
You're reflecting on what you can do differently, and you're thanking the Lord for the whole process of it all.
Yeah. Just to serve the Lord, just to be in His presence, just to know Him, and that He allows us these opportunities. Wow.
Yeah, I will definitely, when we're done, I'm going to be writing that down because that's something I need to implement in my life as well. That's a tremendous routine that you have that I think will actually, like you said, close the loop of a weekend. I don't celebrate enough. I may reflect on the losses and make changes, but I don't celebrate enough, and I don't thank the Lord enough for the good things that have happened, and even the tough things that have happened. And that's
the experience of gratitude, whether it's sacred or secular research on link gratitude and health, and just peace and less anxiety, all of that, and
sure.
I feel like that's biblical. God who created us said, be thankful. He gave us all this and we're like, oh, that's just to make us nice people. No, it's to make us healthy.
Yeah.
So I really think that bringing that gratitude, the expressions of thankfulness and appreciation,
I love that.
so important.
I love that. Well, if people want to connect with you online, I think the primary way would be to listen to your podcast, Let's Talk Podcast. Where can people find that at?
Well, it's through the ladies ministry, UPCI Ladies Ministry. It's produced by Reflections Magazine. So I know it's on social media. If you go to the UPCI Reflections for the Ladies Magazine, they'll have the link to the podcast there. It's on, I think, Spotify, Apple. It's out there. We're having so much fun with it, and I really am excited about. We've got some future things coming that it's really bringing me joy. It's exciting.
I'll put a link in the show notes for people to be able to find that more easily. What about your book? You have 5 books. Is there one in particular that maybe you could highlight here for a moment?
Well, I'm going to be doing some work out of the book, Let's Talk, Understanding Yourself, Loving Others. It's kind of a little bit of an older book, but it's one of those, it's just really the what I talk about all the time. It's life, understanding life, but across multiple seasons and ages and stages, ways of thinking. And so I'm actually wanting to bring that back in and do a little bit more work with it in the Let's Talk podcast. So I'm excited about doing that and linking that book with the podcast. I just, we did some revisions on my book, I Don't Want a Divorce. That's been fun, kind of bringing that back to life again, bringing that, it's used a lot in small groups, so that's fun. You know what, I just like to think we have a lot of resources. I know there's great stuff out there, and there's so much information and material, but I like apostolic resources. I like to know that the person that I'm reading from, has an experience with the Lord that they can identify with me and I can identify with them.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Miller, thank you so much for joining us today. I greatly appreciate your
Oh,
time. I
thank
know our audience is going
you.
to love this. And
Well,
so
it's
thank you
been
for
so much fun. Thank you for having me.
absolutely. We'll have to have you back sometime.
Let's do it.
And so this concludes our show today. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.